This is part two of the artist doing a walkthrough of her own tarot deck. In this part, we're going to be talking about the upper realm of the minor arcana. That's the Empyrean Court. So you have the four hierarchies in the courts, right? And then you have aces, twos, and threes. So that's seven provinces in the upper realm of the minor arcana. The next video will be about the lower realm, which is the fours through tens, seven lower provinces. The seven provinces of the upper realm are akin to your higher consciousness or the unconscious part of your mind, whereas the seven provinces of the lower realm of the minor arcana to me represent the conscious part of the mind. And this is 100% my own fabrication. This is not like a tarot thing. I mean, it could be. Everything is kind of a tarot thing, right? But what I mean to say is this is not something that's established standard. This whole concept of seven regions, seven provinces, upper realm, lower realm, this is my own thing that I have put together and conceived of for the Spirit Keepers Tarot deck. The reason why after the major arcana, after key 21, New World Order, you have the aces, twos, and threes, and then you have the Empyrean Court beginning with the highest level, the Archangel, then that's the Tarot Kings, then you have the Shields, the Queens, the Knights or the Shining Ones, and then you have the Heralds, who are the Tarot Pages. The order there is intended to express the concept of the aces ketor, the crown, twos, and threes. They're about ideas and inspiration germinating within. It's still mainly in the unconscious part of your mind, not yet fully fleshed out. And it's through the vehicle of the court cards, personalities, archetypes, that these germinating ideas begin to descend down from the higher consciousness or your unconscious part of the mind down into the materialized form, into your conscious level on the mundane plane of being. From the first part of this walkthrough series that I did, I realized when I show the cards, they don't really show. That's why I did the inserts of the slides. And I think I'm going to do that again. Therefore, I don't feel as obligated to keep on showing you the cards, which was not very practical anyway. You couldn't really see anything. So let's begin with the Ace of Wands, the hallowed flame. So what you see here is you have the torch, and then behind it you have a wand. So it's like, wait, why are there two objects that represent wands or fire in this ace card? It's the idea of the sacred marriage of spirit and matter to produce the ace of wands, ace of scepters, in this case, the hallowed flame. So this is a representation of the sacred flame, but because it's an ace, it's about the idea of planting a seed. You have the magician's wand in the background to represent that this is not just that the sacred flame is beginning its descent down into material being. Then you have the Holy Grail. In the Holy Grail, the concept here is to find that which fulfills your soul. And that's what I wanted to express here in the artwork. What fulfills your soul and finding that. And it's also about quenching the unquenchable thirst. The swords suit in modernity, we've come to associate with communications, media, writing, and so the Ace of Swords I have titled the Sacred Word. And the expression here in the picture, I hope, is that of the great right. But instead of this concept of male-female copulation, it's actually, in a way, male-male, if you had to gender it. It's the sword and the crown. Also, the concept of sacred marriage, just like you had in the Ace of Wands, but slightly a different interpretation of that concept of the sacred marriage. The sword is also about using words as a weapon, and the crown represents the great work. The goetic shield that you see on the crown, but it's also where it intersects with the sword. This represents the philosopher's stone, hence the center red of cinnabar or rubito. The shield is always about having a solid defense or rebuttal at the ready, sacred word. Also in the four aces, you'll see that the wands corresponded with the ascendant, the cup simum coli, the swords, the descendant point up. These are personal sensitive points that also correspond with the equinoxes and the solstices. And then in the Ace of Orbs, Ace of Pentacles or discs, it corresponds with the medium coli, the MC or midheaven sign. And here in the Bread of Life, you have depicted Miriam, Mother Mary, who was married to Joseph the carpenter, Tecton. Tecton also is connected to the idea of Masons and Freemasonry. So there's a lot of references here in all of the four aces with regard to the concept of the sacred marriage, different ideas of the sacred marriage. And here the Ace of Orbs is about fertilization after the Great Rite. It's picturing what happens after the Great Rite. And also in the background, you have the Sator acrostic. The Two of Wands, the discerning one. Here I wanted to depict the safe harbor. So when you see this card, you think, oh, safe harbor, safe harbor. At least that's kind of the pictorial expression I was going for. And it pictures in the back Guan Yu or Guan Gong, who is essentially a god of war, god of brotherhood, loyalty, and the god of oaths in Chinese mythos and Taoism. He's also kind of found his way into Mahayana Buddhism, and in some sects of Mahayana Buddhism, he's described as the Bodhisattva. It's weird, it's interesting, who knows, right? Then in the Two of Chalices, the joined one, you have this concept of vitriol, Vitriol, and alchemy, which essentially translates to visit the interior of the earth, and there you will discover the philosopher's stone or spiritual purification. So the idea here is spiritual purification, and it represents spirit of love, the spirit of love in all forms. There's also a sweet little reference to the goddess Freya in the corner with Freya's hands, the ladybug. The Two of Swords, the blind seer, the triangle above, inverted triangle, where you see the all-seeing eye, you have the sun and moon on two sides again. There is a reference to the cubic stone, but this time it's a little bit translucent so you can see inside the cubic stone. On one side, you have the lighthouse of Alexandria, and then on the other side, you have a statue of Horus. If you look closely at the golden yellow dress that the blind seer is wearing, that is a pictorial reference to the Two of Swords in the Crowley-Harris Thoth deck. Two of Orbs. I've renamed this card to the Tension for the third edition, and I've also reimagined the picture here to better express that concept of the tension in the Two of Orbs. This is one of those pip cards in the tarot where at least in the way I see it, the Marseille, the Rider-Waite-Smith, and the Thoth all have slightly different meanings in terms of how you would interpret the Two of Discs, Two of Coins, Two of Pentacles. Here, I've tried to reconcile all three, and we have pictured Allah, who is an Alushi of the earth and underworld from the Igbo pantheon or Igbo religion. And you also see the serpent that Crowley referenced as being rather significant in terms of the depiction of the Two of Discs. And in the background, you have the constellation Draco. The politic, Three of Scepters. In this card, I've pictured three Babylonian magi or high priests from the Chaldean Empire. And here there are angelic references to Archangel Uriel and also Metatron. Whereas the Two of Scepters, remember the picture here is about safe harbor. Think safe harbor, the discerning one. There's this idea of almost conservatism or playing it safe, not taking too many risks. Whereas in the politic, the Three of Wands, it's kind of a different energy. It's alliances, it's diplomacy. The three are working together. It's about expansion through alliances. Therefore, the energy in the Three of Wands compared to the safe harbor Two of Wands is that the politic is more expansive, more about empowerment and more about manifestation, whereas Two of Wands has more of a preservation vibe. At least that's what I was trying to express in the two cards. You don't have to go with that. You can read the Two of Wands and Three of Wands in the deck the way you have always read the Two of Wands and Three of Wands. But again, to harken back to that point of the Two of Wands, Two of Scepters versus the Three of Scepters, Two of Scepters is this idea of being discerning and prioritizing, trying to figure out what it is that you value, what's important. Safe harbor, again, that's the thing that I hope to convey. Whereas the politic, the Three of Scepters, this card is what you will, you shall manifest. And I hope that's the idea that you get. You have this sense of empowerment. It's more proactive energy. It's more ambitious and expansive. Three of Chalices, the kindred. Here you see a Norse maiden, mother, and crone from Viking Age Scandinavia. They are Shikunor. I know I mispronounced that horribly. I'm very sorry. Shokunor, or essentially, and this is a very rough translation, it's a poor one at that, three witches from 12th century Gothic England. They would have been referred to as Helrun, I believe. You also see an early version of the Sator acrostic in the background, and all of these sigil references on this card come from a 16th century Icelandic grimoire, the Galdr book. The Three of Swords, the bereaved. Here you see Isis or Uset, connection to Mother Mary. And that's kind of what I was going for, like an earlier manifestation of Mother Mary. The esoteric interpretation of the Three of Swords has often been that of the Immaculate Heart of Mary or her Lady of Sorrows. That's what I wanted to bring into this card, and also embed into it a positive prophetic message to those who do end up getting this card, or when people are going through a Three of Swords moment in their lives. Ultimately, if you know the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, the message here is that of resurrection. And if you look closely in the background, you're going to see the faintest inscription of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Three of Orbs, the Mason card. Just if I have to confess my biases and being partial, I am partial to the Three of Orbs, the Mason card in my deck. Here you see depicted the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey, formerly known as Constantinople. And here I've excluded anthropomorphic images. It's depicting the divine through iconicism or aniconism. Aniconism? Anyway, and so here you're using geometric patterns and calligraphy to express God. I've already covered the Empyrean Courts, so we'll try to get through this fairly quickly. We have the King of Wands, Archangel of Glory. This is Hokkaido during the Boshin War. So this is pre-Meiji era Japan, and that's the cultural depictions here. You have the Archangel of Healing. That's the King of Chalices, King of Cups. This is an Inuk. That's the singular form of the plural Inuit, spiritual healer. And this is set in the Arctic tundra, and in the background you can see the Aurora Borealis. King of Swords, a Templar. Here you're going to see the Goetic Seal of Solomon again, the reference to Cinnabar and the Philosopher's Stone on the Helmet of Salvation. You're going to see another reference to the Ark of the Covenant. And so I wanted to express two different theories or mythologies for where the Ark of the Covenant ended up. There's one mythology, which is the one depicted in Key 4, the Emperor, Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, where it was believed that the Ark of the Covenant was given to Menelik I and brought down to Ethiopia. I say down because it's coming from Jerusalem, brought down to Ethiopia for safekeeping. And then another theory or mythology is that the Ark of the Covenant was somehow found in Jerusalem by the Templars, and the Templars or their heirs afterward are who are now safekeeping the Ark of the Covenant. So I wanted to express both mythologies in this deck. Then we have the Archangel of Mysteries. And here we are in Patagonia. This is where we would find modern day Chile. So it's now the south part of South America. This expresses one of the cultures, one of the Andean cultures along that part of South America, the tip, that would have been probably part of the Inca Empire. So they're part of the Inca, but shows the diversity of the Inca Empire. Queen of Wands, the golden shield depicting Nuska, patron god of arts and civilization, human ingenuity, creativity, god of fire as well. And he's part of the Babylonian trinity of gods, along with Enki and Marduk are the other two. And on the shield, for the golden shield, you're going to see a Zoroastrian prayer in Old Persian cuneiform. It's an invocation of protection. Queen of Chalices, the ivory shield depicts Heramed. I hope I am pronouncing that correct, or at least in the ballpark, from the Tuatha De Danann. Also, I'm pretty sure I butchered that as well. Tribe of the goddess of Danu in Gaelic lore, and this is depicting an immortal of healing. The Scarlet Shield, Queen of Swords, usually my significator card. Here we're depicting an Aztlan or Aztec, specifically a Shorn one, one class of Aztec warrior priests from Mexica Tenochtitlan. I devoted quite a lot of time reimagining Tenochtitlan and drawing the setting of this card that ended up getting all covered up by the primary subject matter, which is as it should, but I did spend a lot of time on the background and the world building. Queen of Orbs, the ebony shield depicts an actual historic figure. This is Dia, a warrior queen of the Amazigh in Northwest Africa. And again, I fully fleshed out the background before the final composition with the primary subject matter. So I fleshed out the full depiction of a Moor palace in the background setting. The Knight of Wands, the shining flame, depicts a Hwarang knight from the Silla Empire, part of Korea. And this is the Hwarang were an elite fighting force who were deeply Mahayana Buddhists, and the background, again, fully fleshed out a monastery. If you recall key 5, the Hierophant card in the Revelation edition, I depicted the Bodhisattva Maitreya. Part of the messianic mythology of Maitreya is that there is a belief Maitreya will be reborn as a human prophet at some future point when the world needs a Messiah the most. And this Maitreya Bodhisattva will achieve enlightenment in the form of this human being, this Messiah figure, and bring about a new world order of Buddhism, a new enlightenment to the world. In the Silla Kingdom during this period of the Hwarang elite knights, one mythology that was popularized was that one of the Hwarang would be the reborn messianic figure, the reborn Maitreya. And so you often saw these very martyr-like heroic Hwarang who believed they were the Messiah. They believed they were the reincarnation of the Maitreya Bodhisattva. Shining Waters, the Knight of Chalices. In the background, you see Florence, Italy, and the setting here is after the Black Death, therefore during the Renaissance. And this was intentional because this card is tied to key 13, the death card, or in the tarot, in the SKT, the Reaper. So the idea of this being post Black Death, and yet this card being tied to the death card in tarot. Fun little play. Yeah? No? The Knight of Swords, the Shining Gale. This is a very personal memoir type of card. Here you see an actual Chinese artifact, the Sword of Gojian. This, we believe, or archaeologists have speculated that this sword, the Sword of Gojian, belongs to a mythical, maybe historical king of Yue who lived around 400 BC. You have the Diamond Sutra, or the opening lines of the Diamond Sutra here. Also, this card is about the art of war, Sun Tzu's art of war, and it's also about learning how to play the long game. It's empowered with the Lady of the Ninth Heaven, or Jiutian Xuanyi. Caverns of the Gnome, the Knight of Orbs, the Shining Quarry. And the idea here, for quarry, it's about kind of like a reservoir or a resource, somewhere, a cavern where you go and there's a resource that you can pull from, and you pull it from the earths. And so that's why it's called the Shining Quarry. And here you have a Rajput warrior, an aristocratic and elite fighting force from India. And the background is Rani Ki Vav from Gujarat. The four heralds, or the four tarot pages, are beautiful messengers. You have in the Herald of Flame a Bhutanese princess who is cultivating and being trained to become a queen. Herald of the Waters, you have an Inca Nusta, a different depiction of Andean culture and a different part of the Inca Empire. So this is in Peru. You have a princess, queen, priestess of Mamakusha, and who was the goddess of the seas and the skies. You will see a depiction of Andromeda. Herald of the Winds. This is a Roma woman who is traveling westward along the Silk Road during the Byzantine Empire. She's holding a bronze sword. So here the bronze sword, if you know the history, it's clearly Chinese made. And so it is a representation of her ability to do trade. She was able to find a way to obtain this bronze sword as a means of self-defense and protection, because she is traveling alone on the Silk Road. And then in her other hand, you're going to see a tarot deck to show her profession or her line of work. Finally, Herald of the Earth, the Page of Orbs, and this card depicts the Duchy of Swabia. In the night skies, you're going to see the Crab Nebula, which was a stellar explosion documented to have taken place sometime in the 11th century. And it was observed by astronomers in both the East and the West. And what's really fun about the Crab Nebula, or the 11th century observation of this stellar explosion, was that in the East, it was seen as a positive omen, but in the West, it was viewed as a negative and ominous omen. This final card, originally for the Page of Orbs, the Herald of the Earth, I had wanted to go in a slightly different direction with depicting the Hakka culture, Kejiaren. I'm Hakka from my father's side. And so I wanted to depict my paternal grandmother, who was Hakka. I then decided to go in a different direction, really sat on this, dreamt about it, and figured, how did I want to reimagine the Page of Orbs? And so what you ended up with was this depiction from the Duchy of Swabia. So I see the first three pips, aces, twos, and threes, as being intimately connected to the court cards, which I've retitled the Empyrean Court in the SKT, because the aces, twos, and threes are essentially the packets of information that is brought from the unconscious part of your mind into the fore to the conscious part of your mind by the archetypes that the court cards represent. And so I see aces, twos, and threes as being more high concept, still in large part intangible, works in progress, in the making, in the progress of formation, not yet fully fleshed out and formed as it would be in the lower realm of the minor arcana. That's the 4s through 10s, the 7 lower provinces. And then you have the Empyrean Court cards because they're the angels, angelic messengers. But if the concept of angels doesn't sit well with you, honestly, I just think of them as archetypes. I also see the Empyrean Court cards as 16 facets of the personality that are the vehicles that move these intangible aspects of insight and inspiration represented by the aces, twos, and threes into the foreground and into manifestation. Even though generically we often think of the minor arcana as pertaining to the mundane world, and I agree with that, it does. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have this sort of exclusive separation of the divine and the human. I wanted to depict an interactive relationship between divinity and humanity. The other facet of how I chose to culturally depict these interactive relationships between the divine realm and the human realm was to show solidarity through diversity. So it was that concept of diversity is solidarity, solidarity is diversity. I am absolutely curious, of course, to hear your feedback though. What are your thoughts on this approach that I took where I subdivided the minor arcana into this concept of an upper realm, which is the court cards, ace, twos, and threes. So that's 7 provinces, and then another 7 provinces for the lower realm, which is the fours through tens. What are your thoughts on that? Just curious.